All right, happy Monday, everyone. Today we're going to be reading chapter 18. And where we last left off, the group of Underlanders had just been kind of imprisoned by the spiders, and they were trying to escape. And Luxa performed some type of really elaborate move to rip open the funnel of webbing and to try to let everyone escape through the top on their bats. But Queen Weevox had just attacked and grabbed onto Luxa, so that's where we left off with that little cliffhanger. So here we go. We're going to finish where we left off there. I'm still reading on my phone today because I left my book at school, and I know Mrs. Stombach grabbed it. I just need to get it from her. So, anyways, here we go, chapter 18. Gregor's mouth dropped open in horror. Luxa was seconds away from dying. She knew it, too. So she was wreathing in terror, trying not to bite through the silk rope at her wrist with her teeth, but it was too strong. He felt around desperately for a weapon. What did he have? Diapers? Cookies? Ugh, why hadn't he given them a sword? Or why hadn't they given him a sword? He was a stupid warrior, wasn't he? His fingers dug in the leather bag and closed around the root beer can. Root beer! He yanked out the can, shaking it with all his might. Attack! Attack! He yelled. Just as the fangs were about to pierce Luxa's throat, he flew up and popped the soda can top. The stream of root beer shot out and smacked the Spider Queen right in the face. She dropped Luxa and began to claw at her 6 eyes. Luxa fell and was swept up by her bat. They joined the rest of the Underlanders who were fighting their way back to help. Blade wheel! Commanded Solivet, and the bats formed into the tight flying circle that had surrounded Gregor when he tried to escape from the stadium. The humans extended their swords straight out to the sides, and the formation began to move through the air like a buzzsaw. Boots' unearthly shrieks were causing many of the spiders to curl up in cowering balls. Whether it was the noise, the blade wheel, or the fear of the root beer, Gregor didn't know. All he knew was that in a few minutes they were flying free and leaving the spiders far behind. Gregor unclenched his legs when he realized he was probably squeezing the life out of his bat. In one hand he still held the half-empty can of root beer. He would have taken a drink if he'd thought he could swallow. Boots' screams soon became whimpers. She put her head on his shoulder and crashed. She'd been so upset, she still made little gasping sounds in her sleep. Gregor turned and placed a kiss on her curly head. Luxa was stretched out on her bat's back, alive but wiped out. He saw Solivet and Vicus flying near her, speaking. She nodded but didn't sit up. They took the lead, and the bat sped even faster into the darkness. They flew a long time down deserted passages. Gregor saw no sign of life, either animal or plant. Eventually, Solivet and Vicus waved them down, and the party landed in a vast cavern at the mouth of a tunnel. Everybody practically fell off the bats and just lay on the ground. Timp and Tick seemed almost comatose from fear. The bats staggered together and pressed into a tight, trembling knot. After a while, Gregor heard himself speak up. So, isn't it time I had a sword? There was a moment of silence, then all the Underlanders burst out laughing. They went on and on. Gregor didn't really get the joke, but he laughed along with them, feeling the darkness drain out of his body. The laughter woke Boots, who rubbed her eyes and said cheerfully, Where's Spider? Somehow that set everybody off again. Pleased with the response, Boots kept repeating, Where's Spider? Where's Spider? To the appreciative laughter. Spider go bye-bye, said Gregor finally. How about a cookie? Yes, said Boots without a trace of anger over the earlier cookie incident. That was one of the great things about her. When she'd melted down and napped, she transformed back into her own sweet self again. When they realized the princess did not in fact hate them, Temp and Tick rallied and ran around playing tag with her. Marith started to prepare food. But Solivet ordered him to lie down and prop up his leg, and she and Vicus made dinner while Henry and Marith played some kind of card game. Gregor went over to Luxa, who was sitting on a stone ledge. He sat beside her and could feel she was still shaking. How are you doing? He asked. I'm fine, she said in a tight voice. That was really cool, that coiler thing you did, he said. It was my first time in a real web, confessed Luxa. I mean, mine too. Of course, in the overland, spinners are small. We don't call them our neighbors, said Gregor. Luxa grimaced. We do not mix much with spinners. Well, that's probably a good thing. I mean, who wants to mix with somebody who spends the whole time thinking about drinking you? Gregor said. Luxa looked shocked. You would not choke, so had the queen trapped you. Hey, I was hanging there yelling for an hour before you guys decided to show up, said Gregor, and they really hated me. Luxa laughed. I could tell by what Queen Weevox said. She paused. Her next words were an effort. Thank you. For what? He said. Saving me with the... What is this weapon? And she gestured to the root beer can. It's not a weapon. It's a root beer, Gregor said. He took a swig. Luxa looked alarmed. Should you drink it? She asked. Sure, try it, he said. Gregor offered her the can. She tentatively took a sip. Her eyes widened. It bubbles on the tongue, she said. Yeah, that's why it exploded. I shook up a lot of bubbles. It's safe now. It's just like water. Go ahead, you can finish it, he said, and she continued to take tiny, curious sips. Anyway, I owed you one, he said. You saved me from that rat the first night, so we're even. Luxa nodded, but seemed troubled. There is one other thing. I should not have struck you for trying to escape. I am sorry. And I'm sorry I called your home creepy. It's not like it's all creepy. I mean, some of it's great, he said. Am I creepy to you? Asked Luxa. Oh, no. Creepy's like spiders and rats and, things that make chills run down your spine. You're just difficult, said Gregor, trying to be honest but not flat out rude. You, too. You are difficult to make do things, said Luxa. Gregor nodded, but he rolled his eyes when she wasn't looking. It's hard to imagine anyone being more stubborn than Luxa. Vicus called them all to dine, and even the roaches felt comfortable enough to join the circle. I am drinking Gregor's spinning weapon, announced Luxa, holding up the root beer can. He had to explain about the root beer all over again, and then everybody had to try to take a sip. When the can got to Boots, he said, Well, that's the end of it, thinking she'd guzzle down the last few swallows. But instead, she poured out 2 little tiny puddles. Big bugs, she said, pointing to the first puddle. Bats, she said, pointing to the second. And both sets of animals obligingly drank up the root beer. I believe Boots to be a natural ambassador, said Vicus, smiling. She treats all with an equality I myself aspire to. Come, let us eat. Everyone dug in like they'd never seen food before. When he'd slowed down enough to actually taste his food, Gregor asked the question that had been worrying him since they'd escaped from the spiders. Can we still go on the quest without the spinners? That is the question, said Vicus. That is the question we must all consider. Clearly we cannot expect any spinners to join us willingly. We should have seized 2 when we had the chance, said Henry darkly. The prophecy says the spinners must assent, said Vicus. However, we know the rats have taken many spinners prisoner. Perhaps we can free a few and persuade them to accompany us. I often had good results with the spinners. But you will not be there, Vicus, Sullivan said quietly. What do you mean? asked Gregor, feeling his mouth go dry. Vicus paused a moment, taking in the group. It is time for those of us not named by the prophecy to return home. Merith, Sullivan, and I will fly after we rest. Gregor saw his surprise mirrored on Henry and Luxa's faces. Nothing in the prophecy forbids you to come, said Luxa. We are not meant to be there. And beyond that, we have a war to fight, said Sullivan. They thought of going anywhere without Vicus and Sullivan filled Gregor with panic. But you can't leave us. I mean, we don't even know where we're going, said Gregor. Do you guys know where we're going? He asked Lux and Henry. They both shook their heads. See? You will manage. Henry and Luxa are well trained, and you show great resourcefulness, said Sullivan. She spoke simply and definitely. She was thinking of the war, of the bigger picture, not of them. Gregor instinctively knew he could not change her mind, and he turned to Vicus. "You can't leave. We need you. We need someone who knows what they're doing." He looked at Luxa and Henry to see if they were insulted, but they were both waiting anxiously for Vicus's reply. "They know," thought Gregor. "They act tough, but they know we can't get through this by ourselves." "I do not plan to leave you stranded in the Deadland," said Vicus. "Oh, great. Now we're in the Deadland?" said Gregor. "So you're going to what? Draw us a map?" "No. I have arranged a guide for you," said Vicus. "A guide?" asked Henry. "A guide?" echoed Luxa. Vicus took a deep breath as if he was about to begin a long explanation. But then someone interrupted him. "Well, I prefer to think of myself as a legend, but I suppose guide will do," said a deep, world-weary voice from the dark. Gregor shot his flashlight beam toward the sound. Leaning in the mouth of the tunnel was a rat with a diagonal scar across his face. It just took a moment for Gregor to recognize him as the rat Vicus had knocked into the river. And that's the end of chapter 18. I hope everyone has a wonderful Monday, and I will see you tomorrow.